Welcome everybody to the Serpent Tarot for another pick a card reading. So today's reading is what's coming up for you in June 2022. So, what sort of key energies, issues, events might be coming up in that time period, how that sort of prepares you for the rest of the year, the second half of the year, and so forth. And this is obviously for that time period, but if you do come across this at some later stage, because I know YouTube sometimes sends out videos quite a long time after they came out, then it may be a sign from Spirit that although it's not June 2022 coming up, that the next month is what these energies are if you've been drawn to the reading. But for the most part, hopefully most people will see it for June 2022. So before I go into the choice of piles and how the reading is going to run, I just want to briefly say, for those who are interested in a private reading from me, they are available. They're available only one way, and that's through my Etsy store, which is Serpent Tarot, and the link to that is in the description box below. I certainly do not ever solicit readings or interest in readings from anybody on any form of social media or in any other way. So if something like that happens, it's a scam artist. So just be aware. I'm not aware of it happening to me, but that doesn't mean it couldn't. If you do get approached by somebody claiming to be me, I would appreciate it if you let me know. Not that I can necessarily stop it, but at least it lets me know that you've known it was a scam artist and haven't been taken in. So I just feel like I have to say that sometimes most tarot readers on YouTube, unfortunately, who do private readings feel they have to say this because there are scammers out there. But for those who do want a genuine reading from me, come to my Etsy store. No pressure on anybody to do it. This is a free channel, but just so that people know that that's available. So for today's reading, as I say, we're looking at June 2022. I'll just put down the numbers for those that like to choose by number. But for the other ways of potentially choosing, I'm using 4 different tarot decks, so a different tarot deck for each reading, so you might get drawn to a particular tarot deck as represented here. I've chosen the World card from the tarot decks because here in Australia, the end of June is the end of the financial year. I know it's different in other parts of the world, but to me there's almost a sense of completion that occurs because of that within our sort of financial system in each year. And beyond that, it is literally by the end of June, you'll be halfway through the year. So I thought the world is a kind of completion sign, new cycles starting, old cycles being resolved, all of those sort of energies would be a positive sort of way of representing what some of the things coming up for you in June 2022 could be. So for pile number 1, I'm using the Rebirth Tarot. For pile number 2, I'm using the Crystal and Chakra Tarot. For pile number 3, I'm using the 8th House Tarot. And for pile number 4, the Flights of Fantasy Tarot. So if you're familiar with these tarots, that might draw you, the imagery might, any number of things might. Whatever way you choose the reading or readings, and by all means go to more than one if you want. When you know what reading or readings you want to go to, the timestamps as always will be in the description box below, and I'll see you there. Welcome pile 1 to your reading. So these first cards were under the tarot card that brought you to this reading, and they're meant to just give some very high level macro energies around June 2022 for you. And what's interesting in this is that there is a sort of a sense of both competition and victory, I think, around career, creativity, who you are in the world and so forth, but you may need to fight a little bit for it, and potentially with people in your social networks and so forth. There's certainly a emphasis on things like friendships and social network, but it's interesting that fight is there. So for some of you, there may be a little bit of a battle or a competition around career or creativity or something like that, or even some little spats and that kind of thing going on around friendships. If that's the case, there's a kind of a lack of clarity. It's probably something that can be sorted out pretty easily with Neptune there, rather than necessarily going into fight. But I think for some of you, there's also some big transformative energy and clearing of old patterns so that you can really open up your potential. So Persephone is all about going into the underworld and being prepared to look into the depths. And when we've got Neptune there and the preparedness to fight, there's a certain brave energy, a certain courageous energy for you in June 2022. I think that you may do quite a bit of shadow work with Uriel's sort of help to change things. You could be in changing environments. It could be potentially change around career or something like that that requires you to have that bravery to stand up for what is right for you and to go through that transformation. So with Uranus, with Uriel there, and then with Persephone with transformation, then fight, it could be coming out in career. Certainly, if that's the case, Sandalphon is here to open up potential for you, material potential in particular, because Sandalphon looks over the earth, or Malkuth in the Kabbalah. So it's an interesting combination of energies. On one level, there's something very transformative. So you're very much picking up that world energy. That's something I think you're clearing out the past, you're moving into something new, you're opening the potential in one or more areas of your life. It does connect to your friendships in some way, but I think it's also something that you need to stand up for. But you have very much the depths of understanding about what's going on. So when we sort of look at the tarot, we're going to be looking at, firstly, what is obvious to you, like what are the key obvious external energies that are operating. Then we're going to look at what you don't see potentially. So we'll look at what's going on, what you're sort of well on top of, and the strategic advice. And then we're going to look at what you don't see. Don't think there's going to be a lot you don't see, but it may be that it's more what you feel that you need to keep to yourself, because as I say, you go into the depths. So, and I do think for some of you it's around friendships and connections. There's some changes in this month for you. So let's look at it using the tarot. So as I said, what we want to do is have a look firstly at what does this really manifest like? Because these are the kind of overarching energies of like change, clearing, opening up your potential, and fighting for what is yours or what you want to have, what you need to have, both sort of like emotionally, psychically, and so forth, but also around your sort of various social networks. Some of you quite literally could end up in some sort of spats on social media potentially around this. So just be aware of that. You might enjoy it, which is fine if you do, I guess, but it's very easy to be misunderstood. So I'm just getting for some of you to be aware of that. So firstly, let's ask Tarot, what are the key things for June 2022 for you that are kind of external or obvious, things that you will see and be working with in this month? Okay, there's a lot around emotional stuff here, and I think it's not just around romance. So romance is possible, but I think it is around relationship. I think there's a lot around relationship and friendships and so forth. I think there's at least one connection that has been more battled and more out of sorts and more constraining than you like to have. I do think that there's a clarity and a clearing of some energy, and I suspect for many of you, you may break off a friendship or go away from a particular social circle or something like that, because it's been holding back what you felt. You felt like you couldn't say what you felt and so forth. There was probably initially a nice connection, and for some, it might be if you're leaving a social group that some you can still connect with the Two of Wands there. But there's something where you're breaking free and you're facing what isn't working on that level. You may have some options around career or material things with the Two of Pentacles. It may be a time where you could potentially move jobs or juggle a couple of things that you're doing and so forth. And this might be partly Uriel and Sandalphon, so clearing the energy for you so that maybe you could have a side gig or something like that. There's certainly a material choice for you to make and some emotional patterns to break out of. Now, the interesting thing for you is that on one hand, you're very comfortable going into the depths with Persephone, Neptune, and so forth. And you're quite comfortable in having the fight if you have to have it. That's not a problem. Equally, potentially walking away when something isn't right, clearing the energy. But you're highly idealistic as well too. So I feel as though there's a key relationship in this period of time, or as I say, a friendship group maybe, that you're really going to reconsider. And it is possible that you'll work away around it, that you can clear out and clear the air and have the fight and then it's all fine. But I think it may make you more focused on what it is you want sort of materially and kind of energetically from relationships. It looks like you have been used to the idea that there's a battle and used to the idea that there's subterranean stuff and so forth, and therefore maybe underestimated how a relationship, and whether it's a love relationship or a friendship, and it could be either, but I think it's more likely to be friendship with many of you, was constricting you in some way. It's almost as though you've felt for quite some time you had to fight for your space within your social group, or to find the right social group and so forth. And it's almost like you go, oh, that's me. I go into the shadow, I do the shadow work and so forth. But Uriel is saying clear that to open up your potential. So you're making choices that are better for you. But not, you'll have many options, but not to be too romantic or idealistic about it, to balance, like to be neither. It's sort of like the energy around you is that you could either sit in the almost pessimist, everything is dark, everything's subterranean, you've got to fight with everything, so forth energy, or you could sit in that everything's ideal, and I'm going to kind of almost idealize the shadow as well, like everything's ideal. It's something in the balance, and it's something where I think you're going to be standing up for yourself or making some decisions around friendships. So that's what you clearly know and see. So let's ask, like what Spirit's advice about that is, and then we're going to ask what you maybe don't see but that Spirit thinks would be helpful for you to see. So firstly, advice about this higher level stuff, which does seem to be primarily around decisions about relationships and friendships in particular, but possibly also career. Okay, so in terms of Spirit's advice, they're saying I do think there is maybe something about career or money as well, because we've got so many Pentacles cards coming up. So I think that Spirit is saying it's definitely a macro level around who do you mix with, where is it good and supportive to you, and where does it become a fight, or going into the kind of depths all the time, getting that into balance so that you open up your potential. But they're definitely saying there's a material potential around you, that you can free up your sort of sense of this is only as far as I can go, and kind of almost reconstruct and clear out what hasn't worked, say career-wise, because there's actually something, whether it's your own business, whether it's just a capacity to bring in wealth and all of those sort of things, that's coming through for you. So you definitely can make some decisions about what is and isn't working in terms of your career, your material manifestation, and clear up almost like an energy that's been blocked. So some of you may be doing shadow work around manifestation, and this is a very good sign that this is going to work. You will shift from something. A choice will be to shift from something you have been focusing on to recalibrate that and free that energy, and then you'll close that out and bring in the manifestation in a better way. There's also the possibility that if, for those of you that you're thinking this is actually a relationship where you felt a bit stuck, there is a capacity to turn that around. But it will take the capacity, you will need to be able to confront it, and maybe even confront friends who have different views about the relationship potentially. So there is that capacity, because this could be a long-term relationship that comes out of sort of some emotional confusion, and it could close out that sort of sense of feeling stuck. So that's possible, but something has to materially change if that's the case. Some of you may be saying, I've been in a relationship for quite some time, but it doesn't seem to move. If it doesn't move, if I can't, in a very positive way, bring this stuff up to the surface and shift it so that we move to another level, then I will close it out. And if I can do that, then obviously I'll move into that. So for some of you, it may be picking up a romance as well. But I think for a lot of you, this is about energy of clearing the decks of all the preconceptions about things, and both the negative and positive sort of scripts you almost have running in your head, so that you can actually manifest. So let's ask Spirit what you're maybe not seeing that could be useful to know for June 2022, so that you get to this. I think the important thing is to get to the Queen of Pentacles energy here, this sort of like consolidated, happy, secure, committed sort of person in whatever areas of your life this is. So what aren't you seeing? Okay. So Spirit is saying that, interestingly, while you are someone who can do shadow work on a theoretic level, you absolutely do it. It's almost as though you've got caught in a loop. It's almost as though the shadow work is, you keep doing it, keep doing it, keep doing it, because you're not making the decision coming out of it. You feel the decision would be painful. So it's almost as though it's saying, whenever you kind of look into whatever the negative side, the shadow side in yourself or in others around whatever this is, whether it's a romance, whether it's career, whether it's friendships, or whether it's a little bit of all of it potentially, you get stuck in going over and over and over it in your head. And it makes it more painful than it needs to be. That in fact, the sword cards are always hard because they're in the mind, and the mind sort of like catastrophizes. So it makes it more painful for you to do this and necessary, but it's like you almost force yourself to do it. You almost think this is what I have to do to manifest, and it's kind of keeping you stuck in that energy. What Spirit is saying is that you're so much more in the sunshine. You're not in the depths all the time. You don't need to be in the depths. You're more in Sandalphon. You're more in that kind of energy, that looking to what would make you happy and make you feel secure rather than what has made you unhappy seems to be the energy, and that you have the skills to do what you need to do. You have the skills and the learning. Do not underestimate that. It just feels like you almost think there's a bargain with the universe that if you go deep enough into your shadow, then manifestation will occur. But that's not the case. You've got stuck in this particular part of it. It's like if you actually come out of that and start to make some decisions and back what you have in terms of your skills and abilities, then other things come through. And if you felt that you're always fighting with friends or whatever, or feeling like you'd like to, but you don't feel like you can say what you want, it's like you're overthinking it and maybe blaming yourself more than you need to. There's a lot of really wonderful growth energy for you. You just have to stop being Persephone for a while. Remember, Persephone only spent, a certain number of months in the year in the underworld. The rest of the time she was up in the sunshine with her mother. So allow yourself that balance. I think this is all about bringing your own sort of battles, internal and external, into balance a little bit more in this year. So let's ask for some astrological advice for you around doing this. If we know that that's the key message for June 2022 for you, that it's about not being in the depths all the time, knowing that you can do it when you need to do it and that you can clear out energy, then allowing it to happen rather than getting stuck. It's like a record's getting stuck. Let's see some astrology energy for you in June 2022. Capricorn. So there's a very big focus, therefore, on the powers of the world. And a lot of you, this is going to play out in some way around career, learning, all that sort of stuff. And decisions around that might actually show you how much you can do and how much you can manifest. If you're a little bit more gun-shy of it around friends or love, maybe making the decisions in the material is what's going to actually make you understand that you have to keep moving on. You don't stay stuck in the diagnosis. That's what it feels like, actually. It feels like you stay in the diagnosis side of something as opposed to the sort of like healthy regime that then makes the decisions and moves on. 11th house is coming up again. There's a lot around friendship as well with this. Now, this doesn't mean that all friendships are going to be a problem. Once you've gone through this clearing energy, and maybe when you get off your own back about shadow stuff, you'll see the potential in so many more friendships than you had possibly seen before. But I do think there's at least one where maybe you're going to go, look, it's all too much, and I'm going to let that go, because it's almost like misery loves company. It's almost like there's someone around who also likes to go to the depths and keeps bringing you down to the depths and so forth. So I think there is a bit of a revision about it's come up twice with the 11th house twice now around your friendships, your social circles, what social media you use, that kind of thing. We have the first house, which is about who are you in the world and who do you want to be in the world. And it's very interesting to get the first house and the 11th house together in the tension that I'm seeing here, because they're not in sort of any hard aspect to each other, but like the first house is about who you are, the 11th house is about social things. There's something about the balance between who you are and the friendship circles and so forth that's very important this time, this month for you. And the 9th house, backing your own abilities. Some of you may be better than some of your peers and the people that you're studying with or something like that, and you're sort of feeling like you almost have to do an apology for doing it, or you're going to sort of separate out because of that, or you've studied a lot with people and connected that way, and it's time now for it to be about you rather than the group. There's something here. There's something about disconnecting from those connections that are not positive for you. Just want to pull 2 more astrology cards. The sun, so yeah, it's about your life path and coming into the sun, and being in the sun, so to speak, as we see there. This is what you're not seeing. You're not really seeing how much you shine and why you're not as reliant on your sort of friendship circles or social networks as you might think. and Pluto, and that's where the big transformation occurs. See, Sun and Pluto, again, it's like Persephone and the Sun. You are a bit of both, pole one, and there's nothing wrong with that. I just think that you tend to sort of sit in the Pluto more. Pluto feels more comfortable, you know, if you're accustomed to the darker realms in some way, but you're meant to shine and you're meant to come out. I feel like there's almost a nexus here that some of the social groups that you're in keep you in this sort of shadow work sort of thing, whereas it's time to actually come out, use what you've learned and so forth to be who you are and to make something in the world. Okay, so to finish off, I want to pull a couple of crystal chakra cards for some affirmations, and then we're going to use the musical oracles deck, which is just for a bit of a humorous last piece of advice for June 2022 for you, pile one. So crystal chakra, we have the solar plexus. Yeah, it is about you and your power in the world. Oh, here, it comes up twice, 2 solar plexus. So it's doubling down. This is meant to be a month about you and you really, but not being too hard on yourself, getting that into balance and letting your sun shine. So for the first of the solar plexus chakra cards here, we have Bumblebee Jasper, which is honesty and celebration. I allow myself to celebrate each of my victories. Yes, if there's competition in your friendship circle and people don't want to see you succeed on some level, let that go. That's not helpful for you. And I choose to be honest with myself and others. Yes, so if it isn't working, you say what you think. And then the relationships that are good and are going to last with that and be enriched by the honesty. But those that aren't, you will be able to sort of clear out of your energy field. Then we also have Yellow Jade, tranquility and self-sufficiency. I'm self-sufficient in my endeavours and I allow tranquility to wash over me. So yeah, don't feel Persephone is it, like it's all you ever are. You are capable of doing that more than many people can, but it's almost like that's become a badge of honour. This is time to get that into balance and be a bit more tranquil. So to finish off, as I say, we're just going to pull a music oracles card. So this is just musicians throughout history. It could just be fun and humorous, and if it doesn't seem to resonate, just take the humour from it. But sometimes I find with this, it kind of does have a distillation of the energy and a message that is worth having from the music oracle, whoever it is that comes up. And for you, it's Barbara Streisand. So, I mean, she was very much her own person, and that's the thing, and very different and very, or she still exists. I'm not suggesting she's no longer with us, but she's very unique, very talented, very skilled. It's picking up that sort of thing. You have talents and things that are very unique for you. What she says is fake it till you make it. So yeah, if you are doubting yourself, just kind of do it. And that kind of brings in all this pentacle energy. You'll find that you're actually not faking it at all. She says it's easy to fool yourself, but hard to fool an audience. So this is part of this connection, but I think it kind of works both ways. Also, don't let the audience be your complete guide either. And she goes, if you can't go right to the top, find somewhere else to go. So take it step by step. And don't feel like you're dancing to somebody else's tune. I think that's the main thing for you. It's getting into balance and understanding you do have the power to manifest what you want. You do have the abilities, you have the skill, you have all of that and the capacity to look at the shadow, but you're getting a bit stuck in the sort of shadow side of it and maybe then manifesting that in sort of weird relationships with friends and so forth. Clearing that energy unlocks your potential in June 2022. So I hope that resonates for you, pile one. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile two, to your reading. Just bring these down so you can see it a little bit better. So this is meant to be really high level kind of energy about what's going on for you in June 2022. And then we'll use the tarot to get into detail about what do you see sort of externally in the world with that, what spirit's advice, and also what don't you see. And the latter will be an interesting question for you because there's nearly always at least one group I find in readings like this who are highly spiritual, and this is definitely a highly spiritual group. So, and I think that you're going to become more aware of things, that gifts that you have, abilities that you have, and so forth, and also maybe where that comes from your ancestry. You may be going to learn a bit about your culture or ancestry, or find, that you had a great aunt who was a medium and you're a medium or something like that. there's something to do with your family and connections, bloodline, ancestry, and so forth. But it has to do with spiritual understandings of your gifts with Perseus here, of being able to understand what you bring to the table. And with Gabriel, which is around intuition, but is actually the archangel of prophecy, and Raziel, which is connected with Neptune to the mysteries and to the higher orders of the Kabbalah. There's something about prophecy, different sort of clairsenses, possibly studies around all of that, maybe kind of reawakening that, maybe doing some past life regressions. All of these sort of things could work incredibly well for you in this month, because it's like real knowledge that you had, understanding the mysteries, and your intuition are going to ramp up. Something is going to ramp it up. We've got the moon in the 12th house. Like, you may have the moon in the 12th house, or when the moon is in, if the moon is actually going into your 12th house during June, even more so. But certainly the moon in the 12th house, the moon to me in either the 12th house or the 8th house are always signs of significant psychic ability. So there's something about that. So whatever else manifests for you in June 2022, I think you're going to really start to understand your part of a lineage that goes back in your, as I say, bloodline, either literally or cultures that you feel drawn to that maybe you've been in a past life. And that's going to have a big impact on June 2022 for some reason. So that's very interesting, because it is all very, very sort of spiritual. I mean, and yet, you'll be living in the real world as well while all this is going on. So what we're going to start with is looking at kind of almost the real world, like the external sort of feelings, like what's sort of going on that's very, very clear and open in this period of time. That this overarching energy that is so fixated really on the spiritual, why that is, what is the energy coming through for you in June 2022 that's sort of obvious and in the world. Okay. So this has something to do with finding some emotional equilibrium and feeling more emotionally true to yourself. It feels like you've suppressed quite a lot of this. You may in fact be someone who comes says and thinks, I'm not psychic, but you're going to actually find the more that you look into emotions and how you interact with others, that there's something that you're probably highly telepathic with your friends and so forth. And you kind of think, oh, well, that's just, look at it very pragmatically. Oh, well, I just thought of them because, I haven't thought about them for a while. Just because they rang straight after I thought about them doesn't mean anything, but it actually does. So I think there's something around friendships or potentially a home relationship with the Four of Wands. Doesn't look bad, but there's something that really brings this to the surface. And the Four of Wands could be connecting to blood. You may literally, as I say, learn something about your family heritage in this month, or really start to look into it. And you might be one of those people who goes and sort of does the ancestry sort of search, and you find this sort of like this very kind of spiritual thing, but possibly normally in your sort of family it wasn't looked at, because these are both reversed. So it could be sort of something that, as I say, it's your great aunt Maud or something that everybody thought was a bit nuts, but she was actually really, really psychic, and you kind of start to learn about that. That's just an example, but it's just to sort of give that sense that there's something around relationships, connections, that makes you sort of reconsider this and bring some of this more into balance. You may even have to play some sort of mediation between people, potentially, and you're bringing pragmatic stuff, but you're also realizing there's a great well of kind of intuitive knowledge that you have kind of suppressed, so it's coming out for some reason, and it comes out in a rush. Like once you really realize this, it's like, wow, whoosh, goes really, really fast, and you realize how much you've actually suppressed your own energy and so forth, and it relieves a great burden from you. I think some of you may realize how empathic you are, and you might not again have realized it. Like this has the classic thing of someone who's a natural psychic, but maybe has not been brought up in an environment for that, or hasn't really thought much about it, like hasn't connected the dots, but something is happening to really rise this up. Now, if you are already very much on a spiritual pathway, and you know this, and you related right at the beginning and went, yeah, that's me, then something else is going to happen. It's going to be about balancing some relationships and people around you. I don't feel like it's you having a bad relationship. I feel more like your abilities are used in some way to help others. You could potentially start a spiritual business to, you know, read for people, for instance, or to help with spiritual healing with this sort of thing. It's like, but it's bringing it more to the surface than you've maybe done before. And even you will be surprised, I think, about what you might have taken as pragmatic, but is actually part of this sort of like the gifts. It's so highly integrated that you may not have really seen yourself as psychic, as I say, but you're going to realize that. And if you have, there's a real rush of energy coming through with it. So let's ask what Spirit's advice is around this. Very, very specific, this. It's sort of, you may well help out in your career and in love and all these sort of things, but it's like this is very much the focus in June 2022 for some reason. So Spirit's advice. Okay. So part of Spirit's advice, and I think why this is important and why I think maybe balancing something out around people around you that will make you realise this, is that Spirit is saying invest very materially in what you're doing spiritually, invest in those gifts, invest in that and what you're going to get out of it. But there is something that you've been doing or following that is not really aligned to you and is not right. So it may even be that you come into more balance because you thought there was a pragmatic way of doing this sort of spiritual stuff, and you're going to find out it wasn't authentic. And it's in helping someone else that you realise that, and it relieves a big burden. But it's saying that you need to invest in your spiritual ability, not in the abilities and ideas and foundations of other people. So it does suggest, so it's either that you have been very much around a very scientific sort of world, very material world that went, that's all rubbish, and you're now coming to realise that you really have this ability and you should be doing something with it. Or you've been around some spiritual people who are not the right alignment with you, or perhaps are not even particularly well aligned with the divine, to be honest, and you need to, and maybe have tried to control that, have sort of seen an ability in you, but always you've always got to be the one who's learning and they're the master or whatever. There's something like that. Spirit wants you to understand this because there's a true investment in what, and you can really materialize things through doing this. But there's some programming or way of looking at this or other people's influence that you need to break away from. So let's ask what you don't see. Because you'll see a lot because you're so psychic, but what aren't you seeing? Okay. So this has the feeling that there's something about the groups of people that you've been around. This is why groups of people is important. And it is going to be the thing that brings things into balance. And I think there are good people around you. But there are also people around you who hold a lot of secrets, a lot of control, a lot of, like, I think false spirituality, to be honest. So there's that kind of energy around you. And they've lessened your confidence in some way. So this is, and you haven't wanted to fight back because you don't want to be alone. You sort of feel like, oh, you know, if I'm not with this group, you know, like how can, and whether it's a psychic group or whether it's a very scientific, very material group, you just sort of feel that there's something about you going into your power that would potentially make you be alone. So you're reluctant to make that choice. So as I say, it's either that you start to understand what your abilities are psychically and that some of the programming around you has not been accurate and has not understood you, and that you need to stand on your own, but you've been a little bit worried about doing it. Or you are already a spiritual seeker, but you've gone down a pathway where people are trying to control you or always one-up you in some way. And you kind of want to be in a group. You don't want to stand on your own. But I do think that Spirit is saying you have the ability to stand on your own in this. And that will then build its own group and bring its own people, because there are good people around you who are going to recognise it. It's just that there are other people who aren't necessarily that way. So there's something very much about spiritual practice here. And if you don't relate to that, then it's more about values. But your values are very sort of spiritually driven and are very, very pure, but you're maybe around people that are not as pure in what they do and their motives. And you haven't wanted to rock the boat. You've either not trusted your own ability or you haven't wanted to rock the boat. And Spirit wants you to realise that you're further advanced than the people who are doing this to you. Okay. So what we want to have a look at is some astrology energy around you for June 2022. Given such an interesting pattern. So we've got 9th house. So yeah, it's got something to do with higher learning, beliefs and so forth. It may well be that, you know, it's breaking away from a much more conventional sort of spiritual path and group. Fire, your own creative energy coming through is important. 2nd house, and what your values in some way. So as I say, for some of you, if it's not distinctly a spiritual thing, it may be about a workplace or a group of friends or whatever, where you are understanding that your values are very different and you need to back your values because they're much more aligned sort of spiritually and with yourself than what appears to be a bit duplicitous. But there are good people around you as well too, so it's not like everything has to go. Cancer, this is, yeah, you're protective and careful and very emotionally sensitive about these sorts of things. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but sometimes one has to do that. Okay, let's get another couple. Water, this is the water sign. You probably have water strong in your chart with, like, that's a Scorpio card, Cancer, then water. Certainly your empathy and so forth is a big part of what your spiritual abilities are. And the 6th house, and this has something to do with how you're going to serve others and potentially a career. So it's interesting with the High Priestess and the 7 of Pentacles. Certainly anybody who's come to this who wants to do spiritual work, this is a very big yes. But if you like more conventional work, it's like there's still some sort of intuition, brilliance, difference that you can bring to things, that is about your creativity and your sort of like empathy and so forth, your capacity to understand the environment, and it can make money for you and can help others. Okay, so let's finish off with some crystal chakra cards, and then we're also going to use a music oracles card just for some humorous advice at the end. So crystal chakra energy for pole 2 for June 2022. Crown chakra, oh, what a surprise. You guys, you're so connected. Crown chakra. Oh, so you can't write about this stuff. Spirit's very determined. I think if you don't have any kind of connection to spiritual stuff, if this really doesn't resonate, or if your values that they're almost spiritually aligned are not really the driving force for you and you've got that issue, you've possibly come to the wrong reading, because this is really doubling down over and over. So the crown chakra here has moonstone, which is in fact Gabriel's stone. So that's interesting. Travel and astuteness. I choose to work astutely and I travel astrally in my dreams. So yeah, you probably do. Pay attention to your dreams, lucid dreams and so forth. A lot will be coming through that way. And then the crown chakra here with aqua aura quartz is about higher self and activation. I activate my inner goddess. Yeah, do that. Don't let other people tell you what to do. And I always listen to my higher self. You do need to do that because you're really dialed in. Okay, so to finish off pile 2, I want to draw a card from the music oracles. It is a humorous oracle. Sometimes it's just good for a laugh. Other times the oracle that we get and the messages can be very appropriate. So either take it just as humorous or take the messages depending what resonates for you. Grace Jones, okay, very strong, fierce person who stood in her own difference and her own identity. And this, I think, is, for you, it's spiritual or potentially creative, but spiritual, I think, for most of you. But it is about strength and fierceness when you need to have it. She says, learn to be your own sugar daddy. Yes, you need to be able to disconnect from those that are not really to your highest good. Harness the power of an unexploded bomb, always waiting, always ticking. Yeah, these people, the reason they try and control you a bit is because they are a bit scared of you. I mean, there's a level on which they do actually know that this is something, you know, to be contended with, that you are a force to be contended with. And she says, to ensure survival, prey must become the hunter. Yeah, don't let people hunt you. You set your own path, because your power is considerable and you can do a lot with this. But you do need to clear yourself out from the pack and understand who are the right people for you and move away from those that would exploit you on some level. So I hope that resonates for you, pile 2. I hope it was helpful and you enjoyed it. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share about this, I'd be really interested, because you are an interesting group of people. I'd love to hear about it in the comments. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, pile 3, to your reading. So we're starting this reading with just sort of some high-level energies around you for June 2022. Then we're going to use the tarot to look at the sort of external, very 3D sort of energies that are occurring, what Spirit's advice is and what you may not be seeing but could be helpful to see, before we sort of finish off with some other astrology and other energies. So for you, I think there's some very good news coming through, particularly around who you are in the world, career, things like that. If you've been waiting for a career breakthrough, it feels like the miracle is coming. If it hasn't actually happened in June 2022, you're going to be seeing it coming. There's been some issues, and I think primarily around how you manifest in the world and so forth, that may have been difficult of late, because we've got Asclepius here, which is about healing. And so I think that is saying that you have been healing from something, maybe something around your career or your work that didn't work out, or what you wanted to manifest in the world, and be seen in the world for, with the 10th house. So, and what you could get recognized for your achievements and so forth. And I think whatever this expansion and good luck with Jupiter coming through is going to appear miraculous. It's going to be just at the point where you thought, well, I've healed, but what do I do now? It's like, the dream job comes along, the great business opportunity comes along, you've sent out, if you're a writer, to like 20 agents, and suddenly one agent goes, yes, I want your book. Like something comes along after you've felt like things have been difficult. But really one of the reasons it is because you've really been, using the strength of Michael here, Archangel Michael, to think about how to understand, learn universal truths. What was the healing? What was, if there were difficulties and reversals before, what was that about? You haven't sort of sat and whined into your sort of breakfast cereal about, the world's so hard. You actually really have looked at this and done the work and learn some truths about how to proceed in your career or whatever this is. You've also really started to understand the nexus between the truths of the world and your dreams. And I think probably have done quite a bit of sort of dream energy, with whether you're aware of it or not, sort of started to dream things into being. You'd be the sort of person actually who, went to bed with a problem and would have a dream and it would be solved. There's that kind of energy. Your dreams are very, very powerful, but you're also able to ground them with the truth on some level. This is why you can bring it into being and you can expand and have the luck of Jupiter. But it's just at the point, I just feel that most of you, if you've come to the right reading, you'd be thinking, well, it's about time, because I've been doing it really hard and I feel like I'm constantly having to heal myself and learn, and I'm not moving forward. The miracle is coming. It's coming through, as I say, either in June or it's going to be starting to come into view then. But I think for many of you, there's a real breakthrough coming. So let's see what Tarot has to say. Let's have a look firstly at what energy is there that is really manifest. And a lot of this is manifest for you because the 10th house has come out. A lot of this is around career, vocation, who you are in the world, that kind of thing. And it is all about abundance with Jupiter and expansion. Even though with dreams and things like universal truths, there's a spiritual underpinning to it, I just feel like this is mainly playing out in the sort of material things in life. So let's see firstly on a 3D level with Tarot, what else can Spirit tell us about June 2022 for you? So this is really kind of doubling down on the fact that what's going to come through is going to be unexpected, because the main energy, and I would say it's probably later in June looking at this, the main energy around this is still dealing with the healing from something that didn't quite work out with the 7 of Earth or 7 of Pentacles reversed. It was something that you put a lot of effort into that you feel hasn't returned the investment of time and energy and so forth. And you've, as a result of it, felt like you had to be quite careful in what you did. You wanted to move faster than you have. You probably generally in your life move quickly towards achievements, but for some reason there have been some blocks and you're still kind of working through those with the 5 of Fire and the 5 of Air, so the 5 of Wands and the 5 of Swords. There's been some sort of battles to understand the environment that you're in as much as anything, I think, and you've really tried to understand it. Because you feel a little bit emotionally out of your depth with the King of Water reversed around all of this. And this is also the King of Water reversed is a bit like the Chiron energy of the wounded healer. So you've been trying to heal yourself at the same time as understanding what the battles and the blocks were. What this is saying, and this is why dreams is here, is that you're going to get a sense of this coming before it hits. You're going to have a sixth sense about it. Pay attention to your dreams, meditate, do all those sort of high priestessy type things, because that will help bring in this miracle. It is something that is going to come out of left field. but you will have a sense of it before it happens. And it is Spirit saying that you did go in and do the work that you needed to do, and that will free up this energy. It's even possible with the Seven of Earth reverse that it could turn around something that wasn't working for you, and then it does start to work. It could be that you break through the blocks, or you clear that energy altogether because it was holding you back, and something new comes in, something more miraculous that brings in the Jupiter energy. But I think it's sort of as the month progresses. I think during much of June you're still doing the healing and you're really working out what this means, and you're getting the kind of psychic downloads. So let's see what Spirit's advice is for you given that. Okay, the fact that we've got 4 reversed cards there, I think that it's picking up this sense that I have, which is that this is later in the month. And so I think Spirit is saying don't act precipitously. Just keep doing what you're doing. Keep healing, using your sort of psychic energy to heal sort of how you feel within yourself. And if some of you, I'm getting, if there has been something you literally have been healing from in terms of sort of some sort of medical issue or whatever, just allow the time for that to happen. It will happen. And if you've been worried about, like the longer term prognosis, it will be better than you fear. But allow yourself that time to do it. Don't make any immediate decisions when you're still in the healing and understanding phase, because something's going to shift this energy for you. You do need to process something, the emotional disappointment on some level though. You do need to feel prepared to it's almost like you have to let go of something. It's like let go and let God, as they say. Then the energy can come in. So while you're trying to control it or manage it, that won't work for you. You need to truly let go. And like it has to be legit. It's almost like you can't kind of go, oh, I'm going to kind of sort of let go of this dream, but I'm going to still have it on the side. With the 9 of Fire reverse, that's the card of not keeping on. Like it's something that needs to shift and go. It doesn't mean that it couldn't come back in another form, but it's like you have to genuinely go through the healing, let go of something that you felt wasn't working. That allows the miracle to come through for what is meant to work for you. And you need to sort of let go of what you thought, how you thought that was the only way you could be happy, because this is sort of what it's sort of saying. It's saying that maybe you had a dream for a long period of time and you really worked at it and really worked at it, but you just kept getting stupid blocks all the time and it just doesn't make sense. Spirit is saying that you need to be prepared to let all that go and redefine what would make you happy. That will then allow the energy in to bring in the abundance and the happiness and the achievement, which may paradoxically be in exactly the thing you wanted, but you had to be prepared to let it go. So this is interesting. All right, so let's have a look at what you don't see or don't know. Okay, you don't know the miracles coming in, but it is very interesting. Hierophant, I think, is connecting to sort of like high, in this case, higher energy archangel, sort of like spirit guide sort of stuff. That's what I feel, but it's in a very material way with Taurus, so bringing in material outcomes and material benefits. So that is coming, and it's coming via someone who has a similar viewpoint to you in some way, and someone who really admires, I think, the way that you think and the way that you sort of create. So there's a partner coming in. If this was around a relationship, then letting go of a relationship brings a better relationship in. I think for most of you, though, it's more around career, but I'll just say that's a possibility with that. But I think for many of you, there's like a business partner or a new boss or a job offer that comes from someone who on a mental level really appreciates what you bring to the table and appreciates that kind of universal truth energy that you give. And it really opens up your heart and the potential of things. There's huge potential coming through with this, with the Ace of Water. So that's the Ace of Cups. Any ace is a blessing. It does mean it's right at the beginning of something. It suggests, I think, for most of you that this is something new, but it could be revived as well too. It just sort of depends. But you don't see this. You don't yet see the miracle that can come through because you're still processing what hasn't worked. When you start to let go of that, you allow that energy to come through. Okay, so let's have a look at some astrology energy around you for June 2022 to see if that gives us some more idea about the nature of this miracle and the timing of it and so forth. So third quarter, the release out with the old. Yes, it's again saying you need to let go of the old. I am getting for some of you, it'll come back in another form. I don't think for all of you that come here, it's literally gone, but you have to be prepared to let it go. And for others, it is gone because something new is coming in. So it just sort of depends on who's come here. Aquarius. I think this is connecting to me with this King of Air. I think that there is a kind of a higher order, universal truth, transpersonal aspect to what you're bringing in. You know, paradoxically will really open your heart a lot because it will feel miraculous, I think. But there's something bigger that you can do, and your own healing and what you've learned is actually going to help other people. So there's something that is bigger than you coming through. Opposition, we'll have a look at what planets are in opposition, but there's the tension. I think this is partly the opposition within you, the not wanting to let go, the kind of being caught in the healing space. Sextile, but it'll be easier than you think. So, okay, we'll look at planets for both of those. Things will be easier because the miracle's coming through. We have Mars, which will revive more energy and ambition for you, and Saturn, which will give you structure and so forth. So I think Saturn here is good. I think it's a good balance. It's the structure and the intellect and so forth, as well as the ambition. Let's have a look at what the opposition and sextile energies are. I'm just going to deal out till I get planets to see what they are. Mercury. Mercury and the Sun. Okay. So this suggests that there's something about the way you're communicating that is in opposition to what your life path is. This is one of the things that you kind of are going to have the aha moment about. It's almost as though the communication of what you're trying to do needs to be balanced with what your life path is better. That allows the energy to come through. And it is a bit about self-belief and believing in your capacity to think and communicate. But there's something there. I think it ultimately also means that there's something about what you will do in your life path that brings into balance sort of karma and communication in some way. Let's see what's easy with sextile. Uranus, so change will be easier than you think, and Uranus has its own kind of miraculous sense to it. Uranus and Chiron. So the transformation, the change and the healing will ultimately be easier than you expect it to be. You've been through the worst is what this is saying. There's a little bit of residual stuff where you've got to break out of that patterning and fully let things go so that you can actually have your life purpose more in balance with what you're communicating. But the revolution of healing is happening. It's working. That's why you're going to find the miracle comes through. Okay, so let's finish up with some crystal chakra affirmations and then the music oracles for a sort of humorous finish to the reading. So crystal chakra affirmations for pile 3 for June 2022. Sacral chakra, what you create in the world, and heart chakra, what you care about in the world. Okay. So sacral chakra here with tiger's eyes about insight and power. So there is something, you will have an insight and someone else will see that insight, I think. I realize my own power and I trust my psychic insight. So do that because you are connected to some universal truths and there's archangel energy around you. Heart chakra with Moldavite is about healing, again, and evolution. I'm constantly evolving spiritually and I understand that healing takes time. But I do think that most of it is done. And you are now in the evolutionary stage, which is, I think, the thing that Spirit wants you to know. So you let go of some of the residual stuff. So to finish off, we're going to pull a card from the music oracles, which is musicians over the history of recorded time, so to speak. It's often just humorous, so just take it as a humorous set of advice if that's what it is. But if it does resonate and it means something to you, take that as well. So you've got Madonna. Okay. So she sort of like reinvented herself quite often. And I think there is a kind of reinvention here. And she sort of had to sort of move through relationships and other things like that. So she also sort of like suddenly just became incredibly successful. So that may be part of the energy that this is picking up. She says, everyone is entitled to your opinion. This might be the Mercury Sun opposition. It's like you don't have to convince everybody. You know, you just have to be happy in yourself. She says, pleasure without permission can be the greatest pleasure of all. I think this is just, you know, allowing yourself to enjoy things. You know, you don't have to fit into everybody else's sort of viewpoints and so forth. And you are and always be your own work in progress. So yes, and that sort of picks up this sort of creating things and evolving spiritually and so forth. So I hope that resonates for you, Pile 3. I hope you enjoyed it. I think you've got some really interesting things coming through in June 2022 by the looks of things, but it's because you've done the work. So I congratulate you for that. I hope you enjoyed the reading. If so, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings. Welcome, Pile 4, to your reading. So these cards, to start with, are kind of an overarching high-level energy around June 2022 to you, sort of themically. Then we're going to use the tarot to look at what that means sort of in events and sort of experiences in the 3D in the month, what Spirit's advice is around that and what you're not seeing and so forth. But this is interesting because what I got when I sort of saw Pisces and Aries is that sort of statement, I'm a lover, not a fighter. I think you're in an interesting sort of like transition point in June 2022. And it's partly because you have been a fighter in a sense. You have been, and Aries more, not so much about the warmongering, I think, but about the sort of ambition. You've been very focused on ambition and you've had very strong inner beliefs and a lot of strength coming from that about what you should be in the world, who you should be in the world, and so forth. And that is going to bring in some fortune and abundance for you. There is actually some really fortunate energy coming in, and I think it's around career or manifestation in some way. But you have a belief structure on one level that says you have to be prepared to fight for that. You have to stand up for your inner beliefs. You're not someone who would have compromised on the way to your abundance. You wouldn't have necessarily settled for the job that was convenient money-wise but didn't fit your beliefs and your values. So you have a lot of strength, and that is actually starting to come into play for you and bringing fortune in. So there's definitely some very good energy around money, material things, career, that kind of thing. But there's also a very big spiritual thing going on for you in this month as well too. There's actually a few things I'm getting. Firstly, there's the spiritual thing. Pisces in the 8th. If you have Pisces in the 8th house, you're very psychic for a start. If you don't have to have Pisces in the 8th house for this reading to fit, but it's a very psychic energy. It's very watery and empathic, but very much going into the depths and understanding things. You may, in fact, have created some of your fortune by understanding sort of occult arts and manifestation arts and so forth. This could be saying that. And although you maybe sort of felt you had to fight in that environment, you nevertheless kind of applied those principles and won. Or it is possible also that some of your abundance and some of what's coming in is connected to other people's resources, because the 8th house can be about that. So it could be that you after sort of like fighting for what you really believe in and staying true to your vision and your values, you bring in abundance by somebody backing you, somebody, you know, being a patron or running a Kickstarter and getting all the money that you need and more to do what you want to do. There's potential with the 8th house that it's also about other people supporting you, being a patron in some way. But it's because they see that you're prepared to stand up for and fight for your beliefs and your values, and they can see a value in that if that's the case. So it sort of depends how it's playing out, but it's very interesting sort of energy. So let's see if we can get a little bit more detail. We're going to use tarot now, and we're going to start firstly with the sort of energies that are around this in the 3D world. So, you know, what's happening on a day-to-day level. We'll then have a look at what Spirit's advice is around that, and then what you may not be seeing. So firstly, what's going on in June 2022 in a little bit more detail for pile 4. Okay, you definitely have been in a battle. Okay, but you're rising victorious, so it's confirming. So With the Three of Swords here, there's been some pain. It hasn't been without sort of some losses, whether it was losses in love or whether it was losses in friendship or reversals in fortune in some other way. You've actually dealt with pain and you felt you had your wings clipped to some degree. There's almost a feeling of Icarus around this. It's like you flew really high and then had your wings clipped, and then you sort of had to come down and deal with that. It was something that was not just, it was not fair. So I think that, you've been in a battle and freeing yourself and freeing others from something that wasn't fair, because, as I say, you've got the sort of strength of Michael there around the strength to be in the battle and to stick up for the sort of inner truths and inner knowing and so forth. But you have been through pain. You've been through, that's why we got Aries to start with. And because of Pisces, you're actually very sensitive underneath, so it has actually hurt. It's made you very careful about who you talk to and who you don't talk to with the Page of Swords reversed. And I think the Spirit is saying, do think about that, because I think there is, as I say, maybe energy from supporters that you could reach out for. Certainly, however, you are heading into a time where you are going to be recognised and you're going to be victorious. You really are the returning hero on some level, and this does seem to bring abundance in. But there's also something sort of spiritual and something connected on that level, and potentially other people's resources that could help you. So I'd say the last few months you've been in a hell of a battle of one form or another. You are going to emerge victorious in this month. It did cost you a bit to get there, but you stood true. The only thing that Spirit's saying is that as you start to go into the winning position, you'll probably need to rethink who you're communicating with, because I think you've probably cut off a lot of communication while you were dealing with the battle. So let's see what Spirit's advice is around this. Okay. So Spirit is saying you're very psychically attuned. That's why we've got the 8th house and Pisces with the Hermit there. And that is something to definitely connect into. That's where a lot of your universal truths come from, and your sense of sort of like moral superiority. And it's not, you're right. You actually do have some really strong, good principles. So Spirit is saying definitely, stay in touch with that side of you. And stay in touch with your heart. You very much come from the heart. This is why it was painful. You very much come from the heart. Don't lose sight of that. But be prepared to go into an even bigger battle from here. Like, this is just the beginning. And it's not necessarily a battle this time, I think, about injustice. I think this is more that you start to be recognised and you're going to get to a higher level, and therefore, the vistas open up for you. And for that reason, it's worth having a think about, what does material success at the next level look like to you? Because it's almost like, I think you're surprised when you win this battle and you get some of the abundance, like, oh, wow, okay. Or as I say, you run a Kickstarter and you get more money than you expected. There's something like that happen that surprises you. You haven't really planned for the next level. So Spirit is saying you should be thinking about that now and going into your inner knowing, and what do you want to do from your heart, because you can start planning for that now. You're not thinking in those terms. It's almost like the abundance and so forth that comes surprises you. So you've been more about the battle than about the spoils of the battle. And Spirit is saying, have a bit of a think about the spoils of the battle, because you're going to start moving up levels. This is the beginning of some real growth. So let's ask what you're not seeing. Okay. So you're not seeing the bigger journey. You really, you're like, and with the Emperor here, you actually should be the great military strategist. You should have or the chess player who sees like 20 steps ahead. You should be like that, but you tend to get in the battle because you go from your heart and from what you believe, and it's all in the moment. And as I say, success almost comes and surprises you. What Spirit says is that you need to see the bigger picture of what you can do. You are meant to be your own boss. You're meant to be your own leader. You're meant to represent leadership in some way. But if you don't see that, you may be overwhelmed by it. With the Chariot reverse, it might be like it shocks you on some level, and it makes it hard for you to make decisions about what to do next. So Spirit wants you to understand you don't win the battle by accident. You're not getting the abundance by accident. You're not getting the recognition by accident. But it's the beginning of a bigger journey, because you're really meant to be, as I say, like the the general, not the foot soldier or whatever kind of analogy you want to use. But there's a lot of strength to what you do, and it's very connected sort of psychically and spiritually as well. So don't underestimate where this is taking you, and don't be so surprised by it that you almost kind of freeze yourself in the spot, because you're meant to sort of do something more with this. So let's get some astrological advice for you for June 2022, because this looks very interesting for you. Pluto, yeah. Big transformative energy around you. Fixed. So don't get too fixed, I think. This is a balance you need to have. You need to have the transformation and when to be stable. This is part of this business planning that's worth doing for you. Work out when you need stability and when you need transformation. There's something in all of this, it's a strategy. It's a military strategist. Second house, yeah, you're going to make money, definitely. You're going to increase your values and possessions, and it's just the beginning. Air, yeah, there's a strategy again. Use your mind, use your mental capacity. Wouldn't be surprised if some of you are very good at things like chess and so forth. So apply that kind of thing to what you're doing in your life. Then we have new moon, so plant what you desire. This is again the Page of Pentacles. You need to sort of see what else there is and what you're kind of building for the future. It's almost like, even though this has been because you've been so good at the battle and so clear in what you're doing and so strong, it's almost like you think like it's just a stroke of luck. And so you don't necessarily think it's going to happen again. But in actual fact, it's the beginning of something that recognizes the strategy that you bring to the table. And then we have Leo, yeah, being more out in the world, being recognized in the world, being a bit center stage, allowing yourself to do that. Very strong, the tarot card for that is strength again, like recognize your strength. You're not being conceited, it's actually true. Okay, so to finish off, I want to get some crystal chakra cards to just sort of see what sort of affirmation Spirit wants to give you for June 2022, and then we're going to use the music oracles for a little bit of a humorous finish to the reading. So we have the root chakra and the throat chakra. Yeah, so you're moving from the battler who is trying to kind of like keep yourself and everybody else secure to the person who actually has something to say in essence. So we have Garnet in the root chakra, courage and hope. I hope for the best in every situation, and I have the courage to evolve. And yeah, do evolve. This is just the beginning. It's not just luck. You really have put in the hard yards for this, and the abundance is right, but it's the beginning. And then think about what you say to the world with the throat chakra, with blue appetite, intellect and achievement. I achieve whatever I set my mind to. And yes, you do. You're very strong. And I choose to lead intellectual discussions. This is the air thing. This is the strategist. Once you really understand why you no longer have to battle so much, you're actually now sort of at another level and you're bringing things in, you can actually share that and you can teach other people in some way, I think. And that's how you become this emperor, this leader. Okay, so to finish off, we're just going to pull a card from the music oracle. So this is often just humorous. So, that could all be all it is and just take the humor. But it could also be a very appropriate icon that really fits with this energy, or there could be some very succinct advice in here that Spirit wants you to hear. So take whatever resonates, leave the rest. We've got David Bowie. Okay. The original spaceman. So that's interesting because he was sort of very strong in his sort of individual sort of being, and he went from one level to another level to another level, and he constantly evolved and so forth. So there's something in that, I think, for you. Plus, in his time, you had to be very brave about who he was. He was very different. So your bravery and his bravery kind of align. I can see the sort of connection. He says, never lower your mask until you have another ready beneath. So this is the strategist. Be the strategist. Keep applying that brilliant mind to things. He says, cultivate strangeness and beauty will follow. So there is something potentially beautiful about what you can create, but you have to own it. You have to hold it for yourself and seek the truth floating far above the moon. I really love that. I often think that when I pull this card, I love that particular statement. It's very sort of deep, and this is maybe the kind of spiritual side of things too. So there's truths that you connect to that are psychic, and don't ever not see that, because it is part of what's making you successful and strategic. So big things for you, I think, in June 2022 and going forward. Just the beginning of much bigger things, but I think it's starting to really see how strategic you are and how you can connect your psychic ability and your bravery to actually bring about abundance for yourself and for others. So I hope that you enjoyed that reading. I hope it resonates for you. I hope it comes true, because it looks really, really great as a kind of predictive model for some really wonderful energy for you. If you enjoyed the reading, please like the video and subscribe. And if you care to share about it in the comments, I'd love to hear about it. Otherwise, I hope to see you in future readings.